Yes, it's on. I can't tell you what a wonderful feeling it is to be back here with you. I really missed you all. You don't know how much. But I have survived, and I intend to keep hobbling in for a while, and at some point I hope to walk right and drive right. So all that's ahead of me. And thank you all for the cards you sent, and the emails, and just the good wishes. I really am, I'm empowered to have such friends, and I appreciate your friendship. I particularly have one friend who's introduced me to elastic shoelaces and things like that. And other things in life I never knew about, like flowered soles on shoes and so forth. But there's all sorts of abilities out here. Anyway, today, talking of ability, we have our own Kem Hinton, who usually sits over there, and he has written a book that really moves along. If you've read it, you know that you can't wait to get to the end and find out, how does this guy mess up so badly? Kem is going to tell you about what I call his doppelganger, a person that grew up with basically the same attributes of his youth, and yet his life turned out quite differently than our own Kem Hinton.
Thank you, Gene. Okay. Now, you don't know there was the Winter Olympics, right, recently? Did you know that Gene got a gold medal at going forward onto the ice? So let's give her a applause for the gold medal. You know, the somersault, the guy that did the backflips and everything, not even in the room with Gene. All right, if you could turn the lights down a little bit and I'll talk. Thank you for coming. Thank you so much for coming. This is a this is perfect, the lighting. It's a very, very unusual story I'm going to talk to you. I call it kind of a tragedy, but it's really about the impact of somebody, and one person in particular. And because of things that happened when I was in like grade school, high school, and university, and then afterwards, then something really weird happened about this guy. This guy was named Ed Netherland. He and I grew up in Murfreesboro. We're the same age. Grew up in Murfreesboro, you know, wonderful little Murfreesboro college town, which is now, you know, very, very different. But I'm so fortunate. My father was educated. My father's from Clarksville. My mom from Columbia. They met at Peabody. They got married. My dad took a job at MTSU as a music professor. He was really musical, had musical talent. I have no musical talent. Drove him crazy when I was in high school. Dad, I hate playing the trombone. Why do you hate playing the trombone? Because I'm no good at it. Well, you should be good at it. I'm not, Dad. And it just never worked. I never could do it. And he could play the piano, he could sing, and he'd direct orchestras and everything. I mean, he played in the Nashville Symphony forever as a timpani. And so it just never sunk with me. Anyway, when I was in grade school, I joined a little Boy Scout troop. I went to a small elementary school called Campus School. Kind of like University School of Nashville is really the Peabody Demonstration School. Many of you know that. Well, it's kind of the same thing in Murfreesboro. Campus School was near MTSU. The student teachers come over. It was a wonderful place, small. And we had an offshoot, was it? We had a little group that ended up being like a Boy Scout troop. And the director or the scoutmaster was Percy Dempsey. He's on the right there. Probably, other than my father, the most endearing person I had in my entire life. Although I was only with him like 4 years. And here's Ted LaRoche. Ted LaRoche was an Eagle Scout in the troop early, and he became one of the wealthiest people in Murfreesboro doing it's kind of the nursing home stuff. I can't remember the group yeah, that's his thing. And he's made a fortune, and he's done so many good things for Rutherford County. And I really, what?
In Bitcoin.
Okay.
He got in Bitcoin early, Ted.
Well, Bob would know. See, Bob knows all, as you know. I'm so glad Bob comes because he really does know. If you've heard him talk, he knows more than anybody in this room. Anyway, Mr. Dempsey was so good. And I went to a scout meeting. I was a tenderfoot, you know, he started in 5th grade. And this other guy showed up, kind of, you know, stocky little guy. I'm a skinny little guy, and he's a stocky little guy. And his name was Ed Netherland. I thought, why are you here? Because he went to grade school on the other side of town. Well, he came to a couple meetings, and then you could tell he just wasn't into scouts. He was more into sports. After the 8th grade, I had a summer job. My parents belonged to Stones River Country Club, so I could go swimming there. I never learned how to play golf, but there were 4 of us that were hired after the 8th grade to work on the golf course. We were basically, you know, labor, cheap labor. I made $1 an hour, $40 a week. I thought I was rich. It burned holes in my little pocket. I mean, it was unbelievable. I've got money. And the golf course was only 9 holes, and we were working on what's called back 9, the new 9-hole. And I've been there many times and walked around. It's all grown up. You know, I just feel really weird because it was just an open field. So there were 4 of us that worked there. The 2 on the left were brawny guys. The one on the far left was David Parsons. Now, David Parsons ended up being the quarterback of the state champion football team from Central. Okay, Central High School was a big school. We had so many people there and so many different types of people, black and white. So our sports teams were awesome. Just I wasn't into athletics. You know, I was a skinny artist guy. And his friend beside him, Buddy Miller, lived down the street from me, and they were both kind of big guys, especially Parsons on the far left. He loved the limelight. He was, you know, he's tall, handsome, athletic, really full of himself in a good way. We called him Hollywood. And he loved the nickname, you know, that's just, yeah, I'm famous and you aren't. And the 2 scrawny guys, I'm on the far right, and beside me is Jamie Proctor. We were little skinny little guys, you know, being around these 2 other guys. We're same age, but they were, you know, you didn't mess with them. And then there's Netherland, who showed up. He didn't work with us, but he showed up at the golf course at the tennis courts. By the time he was 16, he already had a car, a convertible car. And I was working the summer when I was also 16. I was like, he's already got a car? I didn't get a car, and I didn't have a car until I was like off at college. But he was from a very wealthy family, a very noted family in Rutherford County, and his father was involved in insurance. His older brother ended up going to Wharton, and his 2 sisters, older sisters, were really popular in high school, and they did really well. And Netherland was kind of the young guy. Went to Central, which absolutely beautiful. At the time, there were 2 high schools in Rutherford County. There was one in Smyrna, but the one in Murfreesboro, Central, at the time was the largest high school in the state of Tennessee. We had 500 people in our graduating class. That's enormous. And I remember thinking, this high school, I remember we talked, it was 2 stories, and it had an annex in the back, but the main building, it's like the hallway was a mile long. It just went forever. And because the school was overcrowded, and in the fall of 1968, when I started as a freshman, they integrated the entire high school. The black high school, everybody in the black high school that was going to be in the black high school and was in the black high school was moved to Central, which was all white. And all of a sudden, everybody was there. Well, I started as a freshman. I just walked in like, okay, there are black and white people here. That's a big deal. I didn't know it. It was a big effort. And everybody kind of got along, but it was a mixture that was unusual. What was good about it is that the football team was incredible. Now, Netherland was athletic, but I don't know that he was either fast enough or whatever enough, but he was a brawny guy. He was kind of a bully. And he was a trainer with Bill Ketron. Bill Ketron's right above him, the circle. Bill Ketron ended up being a state senator from Murfreesboro. But this team in the fall of 1970, which is the start of my junior year, state championships, and David Parsons was the quarterback. That's a pretty good thing, you know. We were very proud of it. Netherland dated different girls, as I did, but he dated a lot of pretty girls. I dated a few, but you know, he really had it made because he was kind of the bad boy, the rich bad boy. Um, and we had an event called it's called the Medieval Banquet when I was a senior. The teachers at Central High School were absolutely marvelous in art, in English, in chemistry. All these teachers were just fabulous. I'm so glad I went to high school there, and all of us stay in touch, and we talk about the teachers, what they meant to us. This one lady had a medieval banquet. She was teaching Chaucer and Shakespeare, and you had to come dressed as for the medieval banquet. And everybody dressed up. I dressed up as Robin Hood. Netherland dressed up as the guy that kills people, the executioner. And I thought, boy, that's pretty accurate for him, you know. And he was a smartass and full of himself. And the float beside us when we had our senior high school float, because it was the last year Central. Central closed in 1972. It split into two schools named Riverdale and Oakland. And we had the unity of everybody in the county going to the same school, and then it split and made two rivals. We didn't have rivals. Everybody's at the same place. And I want to point out this guy in the circle, little guy in a little raccoon coat. That's Gary Hood. Gary Hood's father was John Hood, who was one of the most important people in Murfreesboro history. Worked at MTSU. I think he was a state senator. No, he was a state representative. My dad just thought he was one of the greatest guys ever in Rutherford County. His son, Gary Hood, was this little guy. By the time he's in college, he's like here, and all of a sudden he's here, and then he's here, and he's here. And he ends up becoming so famous as a stage manager. It's something called the EGOTs, Emmy, Grammy, Oscar, and Tony. He's won the top award in all four as a stage manager. And we used to watch the Oscars and the Emmys at the end. I'd tell Marilyn, go watch, and they'd come back, stage manager, Gary Hood at the top. I saw him 2 weeks ago. He's humble, and he's really well known. And I said, well, did you get to know all these? Oh, yeah, I knew everybody. He was very good about not trying to get them to always sign stuff. I said, did you ever meet William Shatner? He goes, yeah, I know Bill. You know Bill? Yeah, Bill Shatner. Well, okay. I mean, that's who he was around. Now, Central had beautiful girls. This is a group of girls in a sorority, and I was dating one of them, my first kind of real girlfriend, and she was a country girl, and beautiful, tall, funny, pretty, and she asked me to take her to her formal dance in the winter of our final year, senior year. And then, back then, you had to buy corsage. And, her dress, she said, my dress is purple. So I went to the florist, Ryan's florist on, downtown Murfreesboro, and walked in and said, I'd like a purple corsage. And they said, oh, okay, well, we'll probably pick orchids. And I went, oh, okay, great, Came back and picked it up. How much? Well, it was worth it. I pinned it on her, and she had amethyst earrings, and she just looked beautiful. Netherland, as high school ended, Netherland participated in something called the Key Club. There he's with Arden Ritter, who's the most popular senior girl. He hung around all the popular people. I did not. I mean, I knew some people, and there I am with Billy Pitter. Now, Billy Pitter, behind me on the left side, the right side, Billy Pitter ended up being a graphic artist specialist. When you see a show like ER comes up, that's what he designed. He designed movie and television graphics. He moved to LA and knew all these people had a business in LA, New York, and in London, and went back and forth and just all this stuff. Incredible. And now he teaches, or he was teaching, at MTSU in graphics. He came back to Murfreesboro. And both of us were really interested in art. And we became friends because we were in art class with Jean Craig, who's so good to me. I had her 2 years, and she just really pushed us to do all these different types of arts, not just painting, but pottery and macrame and just weird things. And I did this poster in the middle of Jimi Hendrix and had so much fun doing that. That's 1972. I just did it for the fun of it. And she was like, gosh, can we put that on display? And I said, yeah, whatever. So there's our class. Now there is Gary Hood on this picture, and he's a little taller. He's gone from here to here in like 8 months as a senior in high school. He's grown like 3-4 inches in 1 year. And there he is with Connie Stankwich. And this is our prom picture. And what they did, now this is 72, spring of 72. We're graduating. That's prom picture. But what we did is I drew this at the bottom. It wasn't my idea, but I did the graphics. We put down the date of our reunion in 10 years. We figured out that 10 years from now, people will probably be home at Christmas to see their parents. Maybe. And because of that, why don't we have our reunion, 10-year reunion, right around Christmas in 1981? So we put it on the prom picture. And there it is. It's noted, and people, take their dance picture and, keep it, we hope. Central got ready clothes, and it was sad. I did little cartoons like this, Daddy, Grandpa, what's a Central High? And of course, now I have a 6-month-old that I'll be trying to explain this to him. What was a Central High? It was a wonderful high school. Okay, so we're gone. Graduate, we head off. I was faithful to my girl. She was like the hometown sweetheart. I go off to UT. Netherland goes off on a full ride as a football trainer. Parsons goes to UT as a football player, 4-year football player too. So both of them, and they were sort of friends. Parsons was Hollywood. He was a real sharp guy, but he was also really a good guy. Netherland was kind of a bully, but they are both up at UT, and I go there as an architectural student. I didn't have any scholarship or anything. I just had a little bit of talent in art, and I hope I could do okay. Big thing I wanted to do is be around good people. I worked for a guy named Ed Delbridge in Murfreesboro. He had a portrait studio, and I worked there after the summer after my senior year in high school as a grunt downstairs, just doing anything they wanted me to do. But I learned how to use a camera. Well, his daughter was named Sally Delbridge. She married Neely Coble, so her name now is Sally Coble. She was arguably the prettiest girl I had ever seen in my entire life. She was a year ahead. She was a homecoming queen. She's beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. And she was in the office one day. She comes over, hey, Kim. I go, and she said, well, you're coming to UT? Yeah. And, well, why don't you, are you going to join a fraternity? Maybe. Well, come by the Sigma Chi house. Okay, I will. And I got up there, beeline to Sigma Chi house. I wanted to be, she was a little sister there. And I thought, if she's a little sister and there are others like her there, that's where I want to be. I don't care what the guys are like. Well, the guys ended up turning to be fabulous. My closest lifelong, I guess, male friend is Bill Tate on the far side. He's since grown a mustache that he'll never cut off. And Phil Bador is now down in Pulaski. And these other two guys, the guy was in charge of a play class. And Ross Summit, R.B. Summit. His wife was Pat Head Summit. These are the type of people that were in the fraternity, and I wanted to be around these guys. Bob Corker, Senator Corker, was a couple years older. In my pledge class was Jimmy Haslam, who bought the Cleveland Browns for $1 billion. These guys were really sharp, and I knew them in the fraternity, and they were not party animals. They were basically really sharp. They always dated beautiful women, and they were fun to be with, and they were just really smart. Particularly Corker, we all knew, because he didn't mess around anything party animal. He was like, you knew he was going places, just like R.B. Summit. But one of the reasons I really like the fraternity is because I told you, little sisters, well, there they are. Wow! And that's Steve Inkelbarger, who's in charge of them, and he's just having more fun than possible. And so, fraternity life was fun. Now, I was faithful to my girlfriend at home for my first 2 years, which mean I made really good grades as a freshman and sophomore, like, because I came home to see her, drove my parents crazy. Why are you coming home to see the girlfriend? Because I love the girlfriend. Okay. Anyway, I was pretty faithful, and after our sophomore year, she lived in the country, and on her family farm were blackberries. And she said, well, let's make some blackberry wine, balloon wine. I said, what's that? She said, well, I'll show you. You put blackberries in a crock, you crush it, you add yeast, and then after a week, you pour the stuff into a glass jug, and you put a balloon on top of it. Well, it's fermenting, so the balloon goes up, and it goes like that for like 2 weeks. And then finally it's like, and it stops. And then the fermentation's over. That bottle I still have, I made in the summer of 1972. I actually have 4 bottles that I made in 1974. No, 2, 3, 4, 74. Anyway, and I still make wine now because I learned how to do it, and then years later I just took it back up. I make pretty good wine. I use juice from France, Spain, and Italy, and make pretty good wine, dry wine. Anyway, in Knoxville something happened, and you remember it, streaking. Streaking occurred on the last day of February 1974. Now, it occurred at other places around the nation, but the big day was this Thursday night. Everybody went crazy. I'd worked for Ed Delbridge, and I bought a little Minolta camera. So I had a camera, and I'm down with the crowd. I'm taking these pictures. I'm in the mass of people. You've never seen so many people. And we were a location in Knoxville, Cumberland Avenue, near the University of Tennessee. Its nickname before this happened was called The Strip. And boy, did that nickname work, because it was wild. And I was walking around taking pictures. And I took some pictures of some things that were so dangerous, I was afraid I was going to be arrested if I sent the film in but I had slide film. And slide film, they just run through a thing. So nobody looked at it until I did. Whoa, I mean, I've got some photos that are pretty racy. And this was in the banner, so it's not pornographic. But that was what was going on, okay? That's the spring of 1974. Okay, remember I told you the girlfriend I was dating? Y'all remember the Jetsons? Okay, now, the Jetsons had a dog. Dog was named Astro, right? Rastro. And what did Astro say when something bad was going to happen? Rut-row, right? Rut-row. Well, that's what happened to me with the girlfriend, because I picked her up, I came home, go see her at the dorm, she comes out, and she sits in the front seat, and she looks at me, and I go, rut-row, something's going wrong. And she said, we're breaking up. I said, oh, okay. Why? Well, she didn't tell me, but I found out it's because, first of all, she's at MTSU, the handsome guys there. They were always trying to get a date with her, and I was trying to be as faithful as possible, but Anyway, she wanted to go to this thing called the Old South Ball, and I don't blame her, because it was really, the KA's, Kappa Alpha Fraternity, had this thing called Old South Ball every year. And so the girls would go, and they would dress up as Southern Belles. And there's my date. I'm not going to name her or anything, but I can understand why she wanted to go. And I think she was maybe in a purple dress then, again, and she probably looked beautiful. So then I started dating girls in college, and Ed Netherland always had a girlfriend, and he always had a really good-looking girlfriend. And this is the one he had he was a trainer, so during halftime, he was working in the locker room, getting the guys back fit, between halftime, in the locker room. Well, the star of the Pride of the Southland band was Susan Huntington. That's who he was dating. She's on the left. She's not attractive or anything. Oh my gosh, and she was the head majorette. So in front of you is an enormous stadium. You've been to the stadium. She's the star. While he's in Lockwood, she's the single star. She threw a baton. I'd never seen anything like it. Now, I knew she was dating Netherland, and we were like, he must be doing really well. Now, I'd gotten ditched, so my roommate said, well, let's go to Auburn and see Tennessee play Auburn. First time they played at Auburn Stadium. Before 1974, they always played in Legion Field in Birmingham, but Auburn figured out, no, we want people to come. So the first game, Tennessee at Auburn, was on this date, and my roommate said, well, I'm dating a girl that's at Auburn, and she'll get you a blind date. And I thought, okay, because I went down there, and as I was walking around, I was looking at all the girls in the sundresses. September is kind of still warm at Auburn. Every girl's in sundress. Wow, not my date. I found a picture of her later. Really, this is an example where somebody gets you a blind date, and she says she's cute. Puppies are cute. And it was not a good time for either one of us. I mean, it was the most miserable 12 hours in my entire life. Back at UT, Netherland is gaining fame as in the business major. I'm trying to do artwork for doing posters for lecturers coming to UT, and there's Bob Woodward. He came to UT to talk about All the President's Men. and I got to spend time with him. He was handsome and single. Boy, he had more fun than anybody that went to his lecture, because we were in a group of chaperones for him. You know, show him the university, pick him up at the airport, take him to, and these girls were just. He was surrounded with pretty girls, college girls. We graduated from the Hill. Netherland and I both graduated. And I think both of us were similar. We were both kind of, because we were in fraternities, we were sort of preppy. This book came out, and it described kind of, you know, what it's like being college preppy or whatever. Netherland goes into business after college with his father's business. And immediately he's making a lot of money. Because, you know, basically he starts doing what his dad did, established business, he's making money, already has Mercedes-Benz and stuff, and living the life of Riley in Murfreesboro. I'm not. I work at Gresham & Smith and decide to go to graduate school at the University of Pennsylvania. I lived the summer in Paris at the École des Beaux-Arts, and I come back for the girl, and I think I did okay. I think I did really okay, like really, really okay. In fact, when I told my mother I'm going to marry Marilyn, ask her, my mother, who always was like, oh, she's cute. You know, every girl I brought home, oh, she's okay. My mom just didn't like any girl. My dad liked all of them. Oh, they're wonderful, give me a hug. But my mom was like cold toward all the girls I dated until I brought her home. And when I came back from graduate school for the girl, I told her, and my mother said, you'd better. I mean, she'd never say anything like that. You'd better marry her. Don't mess up. Anyway, remember I told you about the reunion? Well, the fun thing was it occurred, and we were engaged at the time, and I'm on the floor. Look at the attendance. It was huge, huge success. Now, 10 years after high school, a lot of stuff happened. People get married, people get divorced, have affairs, fool around, you know, have kids, all this stuff in 10 years. It's pretty wild. I started an architectural firm with Gary Everton and Steve Tuck. We have a lot of fun, 1984. And what is Netherland doing? Well, he's an insurance agent, but he decides to go into toxic waste incinerators. He discovers that in the United States, we need a toxic waste incinerator facility. We need one desperately in the South. There wasn't one. And he decided to form a business. And he had very, very substantial backing. Who's the guy that ran Shoney's? Ray Danner was a major investor. He was very impressed with Netherland's prowess. You know, Netherland's got, well, I'm going to do this. Well, he wants to do this in Pulaski, outside Pulaski in Giles County. Good luck. I mean, the people there, they had the largest rally ever to oppose something. In Pulaski, the largest rally ever, there's a picture of her, to oppose Ed Netherland, who's in Rutherford County, trying to do a toxic waste incinerator in Giles County. Now, talk about getting personal. They taken out an ad. This ad was in the Murfreesboro paper. It's paid for by the citizens of Giles County that hate Ed Netherland. They hate him so much that they pay for an ad in the Murfreesboro paper that basically says, Ed Netherland, you citizen, you know, who's the son of an insurance person, has brothers and sisters, friends, everything, you are terrible. Go away. Governor McWhorter got involved and said, we ain't doing toxic waste incinerators in Nashville. What did Netherland do? He moved south, straight south to Noxubee County. Noxubee County is the poorest county in Mississippi, meaning it's the poorest county ever, anywhere. Terrible literacy, terrible, and racial, people don't get along, terrible. Choctaws were there at one time, and that's kind of interesting story because they kind of stayed around, even during the Trail of Tears. Some of them stayed around. Well, Martha Blackwell got involved. She's on the right, and the people there formed groups to fight Netherland, and including the Native Americans. They had protest rallies. But this is a little town, little bitty town called Macon in Mississippi. They defeated him, and a guy wrote a book. It's 400 pages long. Colin Crawford. He is now the dean of the School of Law at Arkansas. He wrote this book, 400 pages, and it's all about Netherland trying to do toxic waste incinerator. Now, If he had written that about me, I would want to burn every copy of the book. Netherland loved it. He had copies of the book, he'd give them out. It basically, the book says, this is a scoundrel that you can never trust. But Netherland looked at it as, no, I'm the guy that can get something done that nobody else will do. I'm the bulldog, which he was. I don't care about the community. You know, there's just some people that can do that. I can't do that. But he could. And that book came out. You've seen the movie Aaron Brockovich. It's the same story. You know, if somebody's trying to do something really bad in community, and people have to fight back. Well, one of the reasons Netherland's so strong, he'd already had cancer. And he survived it with the help of a local doctor, Robert Oldham, who I've talked to several times. Now, Oldham thought Netherland was one thing: strong, courageous, and he took very unusual treatment and survived a type of cancer. And he was one of the few survivors doing this special drug. Netherland gets back in insurance, and he becomes, these things don't work, but his really focus is insurance, and he becomes an agent of the year for a big company. Now, he buys a big farm in Las Casas. His office is down the street in the Palmer Plaza building. Meanwhile, I'm doing architectural work. I work on the Bicentennial Mall. It has a dedication in '96. And the next year we have our 25th reunion, huge turnout again. And I'm wandering around, people saying, well, congratulations on the mall and everything. I said, well, thank you. And they said, well, what's Netherland doing? I said, well, you know, Netherland shows up at the reunion late, and he parks his Mercedes out in front of the country club in the fire lane. He just parks right in front in the fire lane. That's just typical. And when I walked out, I said, damn it, Netherland, you know, you're parking in the fire lane. You know, what are you? And he smoozed around with girls and everything. I smoozed around with some of them too, even when I was married. So these girls were really pretty, and I loved going to high school with them. Now, there was another Ed involved, sort of at the same time, Eddie Matthews, and he owned property near the VA hospital. Y'all been to the VA hospital? You know, it's on, we call it Lebanon Road, not Lebanon Road, Lebanon Road, out near Walter Hill. Well, he sold his family property to a group that was building a toxic waste landfill. Okay, and there it is, and it got even bigger. There it is. It's called the Middle Point Landfill. It is in Rutherford County. It handles waste for 30 counties in Middle Tennessee. Every trash from a family here, all your trash, Murfreesboro, here, Dixon, Clarksville, Columbia, all of it goes to that landfill. And Eddie Matthews sold his property beside it, and it allowed them to make it much bigger. And there's still a fight going on to try to close it. It's wild. And there's so many dangerous things about what happens in a landfill that people are trying to control. But there it is. He made like $30 million selling his land, and then Eddie Matthews vanished. He vanished. They found his ATV on a creek about 30 miles away, flipped over, no body. So that's Eddie Matthews. Well, Rutherford County so that's another Ed in Rutherford County. Well, we also had a guy named Bob McLean. Now, this is a side story, but involved me and involved Netherland because I think they knew each other. Bob McLean was an investor. Remember I talked about KAs with the Old South Ball? He was a KA. He was a member of KA fraternity. And he started investing for his fraternity brothers. And he made 15% return every year. Well, the families are like, I want to be involved. Okay. Now, he never asked my father for money, but he really liked my father because Bob was in music when he was in college as a KA. And later, he has all this money, starts giving it away. And he gave $1 million check to MTSU, and they bought new Steinway pianos, like a bunch of them. And then it just kept going. And my father was like, yeah, Bob McLean, he's just doing so many great things. Country Music Hall of Fame. He buys Mother Maybelle Carter's guitar, Bill Monroe's mandolin, and a banjo and other things. Gives them to the Country Music Hall of Fame. They freak out. It's wonderful. Thank you so much. Thank you. And right before my father died, he called my father and said, I want MTSU to name the concert hall after you, Earl. My father's name is T. Earl Hinton. And they did it. And we went to the event. And it was wonderful. Now, this was in 2007. And we went, and I was just so, Bob McLean, why are you doing this for my daddy? And he goes, I just love your dad. I love MTSU. It was a Ponzi scheme. It was a year before the big one in New York, Madoff. But we had our Murfreesboro Madoff, and it was Bob McLean. He stole the money from his fraternity brothers' parents, all these people. He never asked for investment from my father. He was caught. He drove back to Shelbyville, where he came from, parked at the back of a church, and blew his head off. Tragedy, just tragedy. Why do people do that? I think he and Netherland knew each other, and they may have tried to do some deals because Bob had so much money. You know, he's just throwing money around. But back to insurance, which is so weird. Netherland, he knew everything about life insurance. I don't know how much you really think about life insurance, but you know, there's something called key man insurance. Many of you know, if you have a business, the most important person, you insure them. So if something happens to them, like I was in business with Steve Todd, if he gets killed in a car wreck, I'm really in a problem. I've got to, well, first of all, I got to pay his wife to get her out of the business because he owned half the business. And then I got to have some money to keep going. And that's called a key man insurance, all right? And every company has. Usually for key people. Well, Walmart figures out something. When you work for Walmart, the first thing they do is fill out the form, you know, I'm working for him. He said, oh, by the way, we give you a free life insurance policy. Really? Yes, for $5,000. List who's the beneficiary. Well, I'm 18 years old. Well, I'm 20 years old, and I'm doing delivery. I'm working in one of the stores. I put down my mom's name. She's the beneficiary. Okay, if I die, now I'm 20 years old. The likelihood of that is very low. So the premium is very low. But if I die, my mom gets $5,000. But Walmart takes out the policy for $300,000. So when I die, my mama gets $5,000. Walmart gets $295,000. This is legal. It's legal. It's called COLI, corporate-owned life insurance. With your permission, I can take out an insurance policy on your life. And I actually had this at my firm, that we had key man insurance, and I agreed to it. And if I died, the firm would get money, and they would get money, and they would buy Maryland and get her out of the way. Well, one of the employees' brother found out that he died in a car wreck, and he found out that Walmart get like $290,000 when his brother was killed. He freaks out and sues them. So they stopped doing that. But you can do other types of things. And Netherland invented something called life insurance, life annuities. I can't explain this stuff, but it's an investment thing. It has all these tax consequences. And it's called lilacs. Lilacs, well, that's like a purple flower. Oh my gosh, that's like that corsage I bought. So you will see in the book, there's a lot of references to purple because it's just this connection with the name. And there he is in the New York Times. He is so well known, and he's living in New York. He's living, he has a place in Murfreesboro, out of Las Casas, and he also has a place, he goes down to St. John's in the Virgin Islands frequently. He is living the high life. And he is known as this inventor of these policies that have tax favorability, that a lot of very rich people and a lot of other insurance companies start to do this. But they have to credit him and pay him. It's an invention. So his office is in the Helmsley building. That's the big building. And his office here, he has an apartment on top of a hotel in downtown, near Jeffrey Epstein in New York. And he's a member of the Friars Club, okay? That's the Friars Club. So he is living the high life. I don't know that he ever had any relationship with Jeffrey Epstein, but because something I'm going to show you in a little bit, it is very likely that he wanted to know Jeffrey Epstein. Everybody did. Netherland also had a compatriot named Ira Brody. And Netherland really supported this guy. He had worked for Giuliani in New York. But he moves to Murfreesboro because he wants to get into politics. He becomes a strong Republican in Rutherford County. And Netherland supports him, and they become buddies. And they form a business together, and they do all this stuff. And they're starting to make really serious money. They are really making money. And one of the things they try to do is convince the state to do the same thing, an insurance policy, where the state will take, if you're an employee, you sign up, and the state takes out a policy for $100,000. If you die, your family gets 50, and the state gets 50. Now that's a pretty good deal, isn't it? And what happened is, because This way, the state puts the 50,000 in the teacher's retirement fund. And the state always needs money for that. So this is a good idea. I thought this was a brilliant idea. It almost happened. But Netherland was crosswise with some politicians, particularly Jimmy Nafee. Bredesen thought this was a good idea, but they weren't quite sure, and it just got all tangled up. But I thought that, and Netherland would have the premium on every state employee's policy. That is serious, serious money. And he was going to try to do that at other states. He tried to do it in Florida, it didn't work. Brody wants to become the state treasurer, and that is where it goes sideways, because the Democrats and even the Republicans like, no, we want David Lillard as our state treasurer. And they select David Lillard, who's actually a wonderful state treasurer. I've dealt with him for many years. He is fabulous. And the other thing that happened is Netherland was making all this money and selling all these investments. Boom. And lost all the money. Lost millions of dollars. And by 2010, the people who lost money that invested with him come after him. They're furious. And there's all these accusations of who's responsible. And there's a guy at Fifth Third Bank here named Matthew Ross who was giving money, loans to Netherland, and he gets caught up in it, and he's sued for giving money where the collateral's not real or whatever. He vanishes. He leaves the country. The other two people, Netherland and these other compatriots involved, they get sued. Somehow they survive. And Netherland decides he's going to invest in the Virgin Islands. He still recovers. Somehow he's a fighter. He still recovers. And he decides to invest in the Virgin Islands and St. John's, which is a smaller, St. Thomas, St. John's, and St. Croix. And this is St. John's. Everybody that goes to St. John's, if you've been there, you go to the west side of the island. That's where all the development is, hotels, restaurants, everything. The middle of the island is an enormous national park. And then there's a far east end, and it's called the East End, right? It's the East End. Well, you almost can't get there. There's only like one road there. It is so deserted. I mean, really deserted. And he's at a deserted spot in 2014. There had been 2 murders on the island that the police couldn't solve. And Netherland is staying at a house. And this is the house. It's overlooking the sea there. That's the British Virgin Islands beyond. This house is off the grid, solar power. He's there, and one night, he's murdered in the house. He's by himself, and he's murdered. Now, the police show up, and later they issue a report. Of course, it makes the news, the local news. It's important. Insurance executive. This is when I hear about this in Murfreesboro. I got an email. Netherland got killed in the Virgin Islands. I remember thinking, he finally did something to somebody, and they wouldn't take it. It's like, and he may have been tortured and torn apart. It was a bad scene. They bring his body back to Murfreesboro. The police say it was a robbery. Well, the only thing they took was his watch and his wallet. And there was a lot of valuable stuff in the house. Really expensive clothing, other things of real value. He probably had a really expensive watch, like, a $50,000 watch. Because these hot shots that run around and say, what's your watch? Mine's not a Timex, right? Something really expensive. And I went to his funeral. And something actually, the year before his funeral, my next door neighbor where I live approached my wife and said, my daughter is dating the son of somebody that your husband may know because your husband's from Murfreesboro. And she said, yeah. And she said, she is dating a boy whose father's named Ed Netherland. And Marilyn goes, well, I knew Netherland. He was at UT. He was kind of a bully and everything, hotshot guy. And she said, well, my daughter's dating this guy, and the father flies him down to St. John's Island all the time, bought her a car, is just lavishly giving her gifts, all kinds of gifts. But when she goes down there, there's always a couple of bodyguards around. And that really worries me. Is something wrong? And I thought, Netherland, he's made so much money in the Virgin Islands stuff that he has to have a bodyguard. Well, the money that he had kind of at that time vanished. A development he's trying to do, it vanished. Then at the end of 2014, he's murdered. When I go to his funeral, something bizarre happens. I can't tell you. But after the funeral, I said, I've got to find out what happened. I contacted the FBI. Many people did. His doctor, we contacted the FBI trying to find out who killed him, why. They dropped the case. They just dropped the case. It's like, he was just killed. It was probably a burglary. No, it wasn't a burglary. Netherland was buried, and for me, a grudge is very lightweight. A grudge can sit on your shoulder. I had a grudge against this guy from the time I was a senior in high school when he was hitting up on my first girlfriend. He kept trying to call her. She eventually went out with him one time, and I was pretty mad. I should have just tossed her, but I really loved her, but it didn't work out with us, fortunately, and I married somebody else, fortunately. But the grudge is like, that guy did bad things, and he did bad things to other people in high school, and particularly girls in high school. He would belittle girls, and he just shouldn't do that. I kept thinking, one of these days I'm going to get back at him. That's gone. I can't. Somebody stole my resolution. And that grudge was probably toxic to me, because people would say, why are you consumed with Ed Noan? Don't you have better things to do? Well, I do have better things to do. Why did I do this? I don't really know. But it's a story about somebody who's really smart. If he had a different moral compass, he would be our Bill Gates. He was that smart. He was that well connected. Our firm, we had our 30th anniversary, put out a book, and the firm went on to 2019 when Steve retired, and I decided to leave. And the firm rebranded itself, and they're doing great work. And but really, as I got into the book, I realized the impact of one person. It's not one person. It's thousands of people to me, especially high school age, which is such a tender age. You just don't know where you're going. And I had great advice, great friends, and I had good direction from my parents. And then we had our 50th reunion, and what did we so many people came up and wanted to tell me, you know about Netherland, let me tell you my story. And one girl came up and said, look, Netherland defended me one time. There was a football player that tried to rape her, and he didn't, but she kicked him in the right place, and Netherland, and he started bragging that he had sex with this girl, and Netherland guarded her honor, and she told me, you need to know that. So what is it about somebody that affects you? How does somebody affect you? The impact of one person. Well, the other thing is I had advisors. These people helped me write this book. Robert Hicks, who's gone, far right, was the first one to read the draft. And I told him I want to do a nonfiction short story. He said, oh no, this has got a lot of meat in it. Of course, he said, well, you're writing. Of course, he's a famous author. He said, you need to do a little better job, this. But he was very encouraging. And then Rick lays in the middle. Eileen Weiss is the author that wrote A Woman's Hour about the suffrage movement. She's a major author, nationally known. And then Keel Hunt and Hal Harden, who are my buds. And such good folks. And the book has received some nice awards. In 2 days, I'm going to Phoenix to get the top award for a memoir written from this group called International Impact Books. It's got another gold award for another, and it's received several awards. And I owe that to those people that helped me, and then the story and my friends. I'm so blessed in life, and I'm so blessed to present to you today. And thank you for listening.